Police often question him just because they find him interesting. His beard alone has experienced more than a lesser man's entire body. His blood smells like cologne. He is the most interesting man in the world. His personality is so magnetic, he is unable to carry credit cards. Even his enemies list him as their emergency contact number. He never says something tastes like chicken, not even chicken. He is the most interesting man in the world. He's been known to cure narcolepsy just by walking into a room. His organ donation card also lists his beard. He's a lover, not a fighter. But he's also a fighter, so don't get any ideas. He is the most interesting man in the world.
I don't know.
People hang on his every word, even the prepositions. He could disarm you with his looks, or his hands. Either way. He can speak French, in Russian. He is the most interesting man in the world.
I don't know.
His reputation is expanding faster than the universe. He once had an awkward moment, just to see how it feels. He lives vicariously through himself. He is the most interesting man in the world.
I don't.
He wouldn't be afraid to show his feminine side, if he had one. His mother has a tattoo that reads, Son. At museums, he's allowed to touch the art. He is the most interesting man in the world. He once challenged his own reflection to a staring contest. On the fourth day, he won. Vaccines have been created for it. Years ago, he built a city out of blocks. Today, over 600,000 people live and work there. He is the only man to ever ace a Rorschach test. Every time he goes for a swim, dolphins appear. Alien abductors have asked him to probe them. If he were to give you directions, you'd never get lost, and you'd arrive at least 5 minutes early. His legend precedes him, the way lightning precedes thunder. He is the most interesting man in the world. The Aztec calendar has his Cinco de Mayo party chiseled in. The front of his house looks like it was built by the Mayans, because it was. The contents of his tacos refuse to fall from the shell. He can open a piñata with a wink and a smile. If you were to see him walking a Chihuahua, it would still look masculine. Several saints share his likeness, or vice versa, depending on who you ask. Dicing onions doesn't make him cry. It only makes him stronger. He has never filled up on chips. He is the most interesting man in the world. He is the life of parties he has never attended. If he were to punch you in the face, you would have to fight off the strong urge to thank him. Sharks have a week dedicated to him. He is the most interesting man in the world.
I don't know.
Some say he found the fountain of youth, but didn't drink because he wasn't thirsty.
Stay thirsty, my friends.
His words carry weight that would break a less interesting man's jaw. He's won trophies for his game face alone. He bowls overhand. He is the most interesting man in the world.
I don't always drink beer, but when I do, I prefer Dos Equis.
An incredibly large DVD library, and it is said that he never once alphabetized it. If he were to mail a letter without postage, it would still get there. When it is raining, it is because he's thinking about something sad. The pheromones he secretes have been known to affect people miles away in a slight but measurable way. He once punched a magician. That's right, you heard me. His blood smells like cologne. His hands feel like rich brown suede. He is the most interesting man in the world.
Things you have heard about me are all true. It is true that I lived in a cave for a summer in the hills of the Serengeti after being gifted a wife by a local tribe's leader. It is true that I owned 3 sports cars and wrecked 5, and that I taught a horse to read my email for me. I almost broke the land speed record in 1977. Popular opinion amongst my team was that my beard caused too much wind resistance. I would have shaved it, except, no, I wouldn't have. Anyway, the women, they seemed to like it, and I was the featured guest to the charity bachelor auction that very night. It seems I recall that I brought in over 13 million lira, which was quite a large sum at that time. Forgive me, I digress. When I was first contacted by Dos Equis to share my acquired knowledge on their behalf, I was very excited. You see, I fell in love with Dos Equis after my short stay in a jail in Guadalajara. In fact, I returned every Thursday after I was sprung to play canasta with some of the guards. But I am no shill. I express reservations. I usually avoid the public limelight after my fling with the Princess Nukilani of Angola caused such a spectacle. But after being bested by Willem in a vigorous fencing match, it became clear to me that he was no man to say no to. So, I accepted. Of course, the 50 cases of lager he delivered to my bungalow didn't hurt. So allow me to introduce myself.
History is kind to the interesting. Their names fill books, and they are elevated to a glorious pitch above their fellow man. Whereas the uninteresting are doomed to die in anonymity, to burn in the flames of genericness for all eternity, prodded by red-hot pokers of mediocrity in a flaming lake of boringness. Look at our American presidents and founding fathers. Ben Franklin, a thoroughly interesting man. Teddy Roosevelt was once shot in the middle of a speech, but kept right on going. Interesting. Grover Cleveland was interesting on 2 non-consecutive occasions. Horatio B. Spoon, not interesting. Also not a president. Why? Because he was never elected. Because he was never nominated. Because nobody could remember who he was. Because he was boring. Case in point. One of the biggest problems we have as historians is how do we make history come alive, since most of it is really not all that interesting. Take the 100 Years' War. More like 1 year war, 99 years standing around. Which is why I've specialized in revisionist history. It gives you the freedom to be a lot more creative. For instance, the signing of the Magna Carta, Charter of Liberties, Rights of Subjects, blah, blah, blah. Pretty boring, right? Well, not if, let's say, King John was actually a pirate. History just got a lot more interesting.
It appears that one can find something interesting about almost any period in history, if one sufficiently lowers one's standards. So if not the when, maybe we should be looking at the who. When we return, we take a look at the most interesting man in the world. The most interesting man in the world. No one knows that much about him, except that he's a scientist, diplomat, artist, industrialist, pilot, archaeologist, guru, lecturer, Olympic squash player. I could go on. I will. Mountain climber, saboteur, jiu-jitsu expert, fugu chef. His personality is so magnetic, he's unable to carry credit cards. The police often question him just because they find him interesting. The facts about this man blur into legend. The details of his life are guesstimates at best, which of course only adds to his intrigue. We can only piece things together from those who say they know him.